Welcome to the Shag News Chattycast, the podcast that survived the nuclear apocalypse. I'm one of your hosts, Steve Watts.
I'm one of your other hosts, Brian Carr. Steve, today's Chattycast brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/chattycast. That's CHATTYCAST.
Thank you, Brian. So every week on the Chattycast, we pick a big topic, post about it in the Shag News Chatty, and then we talk about it in detail with your comments fueling the discussion. Hence Chattycast. Today's guest, back for a second time in a row, holy crap, it's Ozzy Mejia.
I know.
Back for more, are you?
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I heard that we were talking fall games, so I've been trying to play a lot of fall games, so maybe I can help out here.
He's been yanked from his duties to go play fall games constantly, so we had to.
I've been yanked from Hearthstone for this show.
Yes, well, we both have.
Yeah,
anyway.
Here, just so the listeners know, I had to yell. We've been yelling at Steve to stop playing League of Explorers and start the show for like the last 10 minutes.
It's pretty good, you guys.
I wish we were exaggerating, but that's absolutely true.
That's a good lead-in to what we've been playing. Ozzy and I have both played League of Explorers since it came out about a half hour ago. We can talk about it if you'd like, Ozzy. What are your thoughts so far? You actually played it a little bit ahead of time. You had a jump start.
So I did have a jump start. I played the first part of it right before we went on and played against the genie, super easy. I love the humor. I can't speak to the cards yet because I haven't tried the cards yet out in the wild or anything. But just the humor and the tone of the expansion is just so much fun.
This might be my favorite, just like tonally, and the narrator is Elise, and she's got like this sort of sarcastic, fun vibe to her. I like that a lot.
It's really wacky. But what you talk about me going ahead of time? I went to Blizzcon over the weekend.
Yeah, this is news that broke since the last time we've done a show, so we haven't really talked about it at all.
Yeah.
They announced the expansion, and they were like, and it's coming next Thursday.
Yeah, no kidding. I thought, I'm like, okay, so it's going to be a Goblins vs. Gnomes thing. It's going to be out, like, early December. No, it's out now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. But yeah, and one of the things that I tried out was the Escape the Temple scenario. And this is completely different from 1v1. It's absolutely, you're not facing anybody. It's literally just you versus the environment. And basically what the temple is doing is just throwing minions at you the entire way and throwing out traps. So basically the idea is just to survive. And that's actually a really nice twist on the Hearthstone formula. And it focuses less on strategy against a person and more like, okay, what is the best deck I can put together to just get out of here alive?
Just survive, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you pointed out, I thought this was interesting. It wasn't like a thing that I thought about until you pointed it out in your write-up about the event. But joust cards are basically lifesavers, especially Master Jouster, because it's a big taunt, and you're guaranteed to win.
Yeah, because the temple itself doesn't have cards, so you always win the joust by default. So really, really awesome stuff.
That's real smart. I didn't alter any of my decks to take it on a normal mode, because I just kind of ran through all the normal quests already. But on heroic mode, I think I'm probably gonna have to make like a very joust-heavy deck to survive.
I'm definitely gonna. Master Jouster is gonna be my best friend through this whole thing, so I get the feeling I'll be using him a lot.
And you were mentioning the humor. I just like the whole Indiana Jones vibe. One of my favorite things about Hearthstone, I should mention, my favorite hero is Uther, because he's got this like puffed up chest bravado to him. And this whole chapter, this first chapter of League of Explorers, is all following Reno Jackson, which is like basically the same kind of appeal. So I really enjoyed that. They don't talk like normal people. They talk like this, and
Yeah, he's like a bumbling Indiana Jones type.
Yes.
So.
Yes, exactly. It's really funny. Hearthstone has always been like sort of the more humorous version of Warcraft lore. So
they kind of noted in the interview that I had with them over the weekend that they kind of like for it to exist parallel to WoW. So it's kind of like Earth to WoW. In a way.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the wacky version.
I understand.
Wow. WoW has its wacky elements. I mean, Warcraft in general has its wacky elements, but
the trailer they used for the expansion was really legitimately funny and cute. So I'm glad to see that continues in the expansion itself.
Yeah, they had like the old newsreel radio voice, like
join the League of Explorers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and someone was that supposed to be Leroy getting excited in the crowd?
Oh, maybe. I think it was.
Yeah, it took me.
I don't know.
Took me a little while.
Totally was. I missed that.
He's got the gray hair. He's got the beard. I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's funny.
He might have just been supposed to be like
because who else would want to rush blindly into a temple?
Exactly.
Oh my God, it's right there.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. And so Leroy is watching a movie reel. Yeah. So it's funny. It's a lot of fun. I've done the normal stuff so far, and as usual, that stuff is, it's designed in such a way that it's supposed to be like pretty easy for people who have like a decent deck. And then the heroic is where you really get the insane level of challenge where you have to try over and over again. So I'm looking forward to jumping into that basically right after the show because I'm going to be writing a guide on it. So me taking a while to start the show was actually work related because I was trying to get through the normal stuff so I could do the heroic stuff. Anyway, we've been playing a lot of other things, and I don't want to capitalize the entire discussion with Hearthstone. So, Brian, I know that you've been playing a lot of stuff lately.
I actually have been dabbling in more than a few things.
And we've already been just talking your ear off about Hearthstone, so I'll let you go.
So follow up on last week, I told you I was kind of disillusioned with Halo, and I hit a breaking point because I was halfway through the campaign. I'm like, you know what? This is not doing anything for me. I don't see how the back half is going to really be any better. So I traded it in, got rid of it, and I put it towards Black Ops 3 because I'm like, I still kind of want a shooter, but I want to try something different. And then, of course, with Ozzy's review and all that stuff, I was interested in checking this game out. So I've been playing that. I'm not terribly far into the campaign. The campaign's not really grabbing me the way Advanced Warfare did yet. I know it goes to some pretty crazy places, so I'm definitely going to stick with it. But multiplayers, I'm dabbling in that. I played a little bit of zombies, but not a lot. The multiplayer is kind of interesting how they do it this year with the specialists. I'm not sure I love it. I kind of liked how they did it last year in Advanced Warfare with kind of just you make a character and the character can do different things like different exosuits, and I liked the different weapons you could get as random drops and that sort of thing. That's kind of gone, but it's still quite fun, and I find that I am not good at this, but I don't feel frustrated at playing Call of Duty multiplayer, largely because if you die, there's like no real penalty for it. And you just get respawned right away and get back in there. And that was something that like I felt like when I was playing Halo, it's like, okay, I get killed and then I have to wait 12 seconds to come back in and stuff like that. It just wasn't super fun. So this is more along the lines of what I want, and it's been kind of nice to play that. But yeah, so I don't know if there's anything you guys want to talk about with regards to that. But
I did think it was a little unusual that they kind of took the create a soldier element out of multiplayer and put it in the campaign.
Yeah.
Like, That was a little weird to me, and I think what was a little weirder, and I don't think my review already ran kind of long as it was, so I didn't have a chance to mention this, but I thought it was weird that you could customize your soldier in campaign, but in the cutscenes you still look exactly the same as you did before. Like that was like, okay, so why am I wasting my time customizing this guy?
It's like Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, where they're like design your soldier, and you do. And then you're just Snake.
Well, that's meant to be what you look like in Metal Gear Online, but
yeah.
And I guess that's supposed to be what you look like to like whoever you play with in co-op. So.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting.
But
too.
I find it funny, Brian, that you haven't gotten like all the way through the campaign. And I was listening to DLC with Christian Spicer and Jeff Kanata, and Spicer was talking about how he hasn't gotten through the full campaign. Get to the end, because wow, to say the wheels kind of fall off is putting it mildly. And
I think see, this is something I was going to raise, knowing Brian as I do. I think that's like a positive for Brian. I think that was
absolutely a positive.
That was a selling point. Like, that's not
well,
you were like, it gets super fucking crazy and dumb by the end. And Brian's like, sign me up.
I love dumb, terrible things in general. Yeah. So. But like the thing is, between you and then Robert Rath was also talking about this. Friend of the show, Robert Rath, was talking about how this is like the weird Call of Duty, and like
it really is.
It delves into some really interesting things. And it's like BioShock, but if Call of Duty was a BioShock game, and I'm like, this is all stuff that is completely in my wheelhouse. And I love how Call of Duty has become like this sort of thing about like post-humanism and that sort of thing, as we talked about last week. So that to me is kind of an interesting dynamic. So I am really interested to see what happens, and the idea that you can like go into people's memories and there's like unreliable narrators and stuff like that. I'm sold. Like this thing can get as stupid as it wants. I will see it through to the end.
Go for it.
Go good, because it will.
Like I will stick around. It's just been a little bit slow going because I haven't had a ton of time to play, and I'm kind of juggling a few different things. Like for example, Tomb Raider. I can talk about Tomb Raider a little bit.
Yes,
Tomb Raider is
enjoyed
great.
Tomb Raider. It's
Holy
so great.
crap, Tomb Raider's great.
Yeah, I was going to wait till, holidays for Tomb Raider, but I don't think I can do that anymore. I feel like this is a game that demands that I play it before Game of the Year time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those stories that just got better as it went along, because I know for like the first couple of hours where I just kind of met what I thought were generic villains, and I was calling them Templars half the time, like, oh, Laura's going to change Templars. But it just gets so much better as you kind of learn more what their motivations are and what they're looking for, and more like how everybody's just kind of dabbled in like Shades of Grey type of motivations. Like, I absolutely enjoyed the hell out of that story. Like,
it starts
Which,
off
how
so
often do you
good.
say that about a game story? Like, that's pretty awesome.
That's not made by Telltale, pretty much.
You usually say that about an element of a game story. You know what I mean? Like, in Fallout, there's like a point that they come to a twist, and I was like, holy shit! But like, I wouldn't say that the entire story is really good. It's just like there's that one part. But saying like you just loved a story start to finish, it had narrative coherence.
What's interesting is that the game like grabs you right away. Like the whole sequence they showed at E3 where you're climbing up the mountain, that sort of thing. That's the first thing you do, and like it's just as engaging to play through as it was to watch, if not more so. And like just the visuals. Like I'm not one to like talk about graphics, but it is a gorgeous game.
It's a beautiful game.
It's incredible. Like
yeah, I've heard tings about the snow.
Yeah,
I think one of the things I liked was that the QTEs kind of started like at the mountain, and you kind of think, like, okay, it's going to be one of these games. No, the QTEs are like gone for pretty much like the rest of the game, with the exception of a couple.
Does that also mean, as somebody who has not played this game, let me sort of act as the noob here. Does that also mean that the variety of grisly Lara deaths are also?
They're still there.
Those are still there.
They're still as unsettling and unfortunate as ever.
I fell in a spike trap, and my girlfriend's like what?
Yeah.
I go, yeah.
Is that bone? Can you bone?
There's a weird almost, and this is the same thing that was kind of weird in the first Tomb Raider, is that there's like this almost like fetishization of the deaths. Like, the animations are just like lovingly crafted, and it's like, that is disturbing.
It struck me as almost like Dead Space, but in Dead Space it makes more sense because it's a horror game. You know what I mean? Like,
but I love it. I mean, I think that what they've done with Lara Croft is fantastic. I like her a lot as a character. The notion that she's kind of like trying to fulfill her father's legacy is interesting, and they cut back to her childhood with her dad and all that, and it kind of shows why she's so drawn into this stuff. And like it's weird because like if we're talking about like British action heroes. Lara now has her own Spectre, from the sounds of it, and that to me is pretty cool. And again, Ozzy probably knows better than I do, obviously, because you finished the game. But that to me is kind of interesting, like giving her like this organization of people that she's oppositional to, instead of just like a cultist or like one dude. I think is kind of an interesting thing.
It sets up an amazing mystery going forward, and I'm even talking about beyond this game, because it looks like they're in this for the long haul. Thank goodness.
See, like, this is all really good to hear, because the first game was so good. It was like one of my favorite games of the year that it came out, and it seemed like they were building on a strong foundation here, and it sounds like they nailed it and possibly improved it.
Now, feel free to go back to this if they end up just resolving this in a DLC pack, but
yeah, the epilogue DLC.
So I think it's weird because like they're probably hurting their sales by making an Xbox One exclusive, but when it comes out on PS4 and it's on PC right now, isn't it?
No, it's supposed to come to PC later.
Oh, okay, so it's going to sell well, I think, when all is said and done. I think they're probably going to keep making games.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to start off hot.
And next year when they bring it out on PS4, that'll also be when they bring out like the Xbox Complete Edition with DLC and blah blah blah.
Can I talk? There's one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to this game, and that's the Expeditions mode. I dabbled with that a little bit. That is so interesting. Like, it is a single-player challenge mode, but the way they do it is so like a lot of games, it has like card packs you get, right? And the card packs will unlock different challenges, and so the game will like let you like randomly assemble challenges into an order and say, okay, there are 5 missions. You have to go rescue these hostages, kill this bear, fight these guys, whatever, and then you get scores based on what you do.
That sounds amazing. Rescue these hostages, kill this bear.
Yeah, bear's holding them hostage.
Apparently keeping people hostages.
And I think too, like, and Ozzy, I don't know if you mess with this or not, but there's like a thing in there where you can actually let people who are watching on Twitch like affect the game.
I read up on that. I haven't messed around with it just yet, but I have seen that, and I actually want to jump into a Twitch stream and actually interact as a viewer and like vote on this stuff. So it's a cool little feature, and it's a cool little new media feature. I don't know how much play it's going to get, but just the fact that they're going in that direction is really fascinating and kind of just feels futuristic.
That's sort of the first game had sort of had that multiplayer mode that was, good but not a huge hit kind of thing. I wonder if that's just their thing. Like they'll do the campaign and then they'll do another thing that's sort of an experiment.
Yeah, this has no multiplayer in it, which I think is to their.
Because that's for the best.
Yeah, that's for the best.
That's kind of interesting. That
super good.
Two big games that came out the same week just were like, nope, no multiplayer. We're just big single player games.
So I don't want to I think if this game keeps up this pace, I think it might end up better than Metal Gear. And Metal Gear is kind of like my front runner for Game of the Year right now.
There's so much to explore. There's so much to look at.
And if it sticks the landing better than Metal Gear does, it's not even going to be a question.
I kind of liked the ending of Metal Gear.
I did too, but the way that you get to the ending is kind of convoluted and dumb.
I mean, the last 2/3 just kind of felt like they were overstaying their welcome a little bit. I was like, okay, yeah.
But the ending itself is good, and it's finished, people. There's no third of the game that's missing. It's done.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if whatever lingering plot threads are going to be resolved in DLC or not, but this feels like a complete story. It feels like a complete game, and I walked away super satisfied with it.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to finish it.
Without spoiling, I just want to say, I'm not even going to ask, but I just want to say, I'm kind of hoping that they have another Tomb Raider moment. Because spoilers for the last Tomb Raider game, which I think is fair, it's 2 years old.
You had your chance, guys.
Yeah, it ended with an incredible little homage to classic Tomb Raider that still felt natural in that world. When she basically did the dual-wielding pistols thing. That was really cool. That was the music swells and you're like, oh, it's Tomb Raider,
Yeah.
And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this continues to sort of pay respects to the legacy while still making something their own.
Yeah,
I feel like it has a couple of those moments.
Last thing I will say about this, the way this series is going, I like it better than the original series, and also it's basically Uncharted but good. So
shots fired. Oh
yeah,
man.
It really doesn't have a lot of those frustrating Uncharted moments. So
it's
good. And I believe on Twitter
guys.
You said it should be subtitled Nathan Drake is a pansy.
Yeah. Nathan Drake, he shot a bunch of guys. Lara Croft broke her arm, reset it, climbed up a mountain. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a realistic adventurer kind of thing.
Yep. There's one more thing I played. I won't talk about it super long. Persona Q, the Shadow of the Labyrinth. That was $20 on the eShop, so I'm like, okay, I'll get this. And I'm having more fun than I thought I would with a game that forces you to draw maps on graph paper. So that's pretty good. It's a nice dungeon crawl that has the Persona flavor that's actually fun. So I like it more than other games of that sort, like Etrian Odyssey and that sort of thing.
Incredibly old school.
It is.
The term maps on graph paper just...
Well, it's virtual graph paper. It's the bottom screen, but basically that's what you're doing. So
okay.
I'll have more to say on that at some point, but I'm dabbling in that a little bit here and there.
I just find that funny, in the midst of our AAA discussion. It's
yeah, I think that's good at $20-$30, but I saw it go for retail for $50, and I'm like,
no, that's not happening. No. At 20, I'll jump though. I'll check. I like Persona enough to check it out for 20. But yeah, Tomb Raider, Black Ops 3, those are the ones I played the most, and Tomb Raider is fantastic.
Nice. Ozzy, I've got a rather big thing to talk about, but I don't want to take up all the time. But Ozzy, what's on your pile so far this week?
I actually exhausted most of it talking about Hearthstone and Rise of the Tomb Raider. So just in the interest of time, in the interest of getting to whatever you want to get to, Steve, I'll go ahead and pass.
Well, the thing that I couldn't talk about last week, that I couldn't even reveal that I was able to talk about until Monday, which was the dumbest thing, was Fallout. I reviewed Fallout of the 4th, and as I understand it, Ozzy, you have it, but you haven't really played it yet.
I have not had a chance.
Brian, you're kind of waiting on it.
Yeah.
So basically, I have a review up, and so most of my thoughts are basically going to be reflected in my review. I gave it an 8, which is a good score. It's a good game. I liked it, but I think people were kind of expecting higher. We were a little bit on the low end, which we usually are. And my major criticism was, I'm noticing a lot of the major criticism that I'm seeing around is oh, it's buggy. It's a buggy mess. It's so buggy. And I'm like, yeah, it is. That's totally true. But I kind of go in expecting that. which doesn't mean that it's any better, but it means that like managed expectations. You know, like you go in expecting that, it doesn't bother you as much. My major sort of issue, which I gave it an 8, which is a good score, so this is kind of weird to call it a major issue, but my major issue was that it just didn't advance as far as I kind of wanted to see that series advance after like a 7-year break from Fallout 3. That seems like a lot of time, and when I played this, I was very excited about receiving it. I played it, and I got through about 4 or 5 hours of it, and like my first thought when I put down the controller for the first time was, this is just more Fallout. You know?
There's the meme on Twitter right now that I saw right before the show, and it's a red Starbucks cup with a disapproving Vault Boy that says Fallout 4 or like Fallout 3.5.
It kind of is. Like I saw one review call it Fallout 3 Season 2, which is like, yeah, that's kind of descriptive. Like they've changed very little, and they've changed so little that it feels like you're just basically playing Fallout 3. The one major new addition is this crafting interface, which is a little bit clumsy in some ways, but it works well enough. But this crafting interface feels so naturally tied to the rest of the systems of finding junk everywhere that I kind of half suspect that it was on the design doc for Fallout 3. and that they had to rip it out for whatever reason, and now they finally were able to add it in. Because it just makes sense of all the junk you find. Like when you look back at Fallout 3, finding all that junk after you've played with the crafting system, it's like, well, that was actually really pointless without this. Like, at the time, it was like, well, it was contextual storytelling, blah, blah, blah. But once you've seen this, it's like, oh, this is the reason that stuff exists. So I kind of wonder if it was part of the design doc originally, which means that if that's true, which, again, this is just my suspicion, but if that's true, it would mean that, like, Fallout 4 is basically, like, what they wanted Fallout 3 to be, which is why it would feel so similar. But I do like the story better. I thought the story was a little more personal, that other than go find your dad, it's go find your son. And it's in Boston, which I live around the DC area, so Boston was more of an entertaining area for me to explore.
Here's a question I haven't seen addressed anywhere.
Shoot.
Do they reflect the Boston accent properly?
No, not.
And what's the point?
I don't know. They all just talk like
anywhere.
I'm getting your standard, $20 now.
Yeah, your standard. The references to Boston are more references to locations and also Boston's, historical patriotism. Like at one point you get to this town. This is an extremely minor spoiler. At one point you get to a town called Good Neighbor, and the sort of brutal leader of that town is this ghoul, and he introduces himself as John Hancock. And you find out through the course of like talking to somebody that basically like he was at the John Hancock Museum and he broke in and like stole John Hancock's clothes and just decided to start calling himself that. So like it's little things like that where the Boston part comes out.
I guess it's hard to.
This ghoul wearing like a fancy 18th century coat and like a tricorn hat. It's pretty funny. I
guess it's hard to build a game around really narrow streets, Dunkin' Donuts, and calling things wicked. So
I think there is. I feel like there is a donut shop.
Socks.
Which is probably their take on the donut.
No, ma.
But even like in the computers and stuff, you'll hack computers all the time, and you look in what they're saying, and it's all just like written as if it could be written in California or Kansas or wherever. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I guess that kind of makes sense because obviously things develop differently, but those accents would have still existed when the bombs went off. So.
But even before the bombs went off, you had this guy come up and ask you if you want to buy your way into a vault, and all of your accents are fine.
Yeah. They all need to sound like Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. The biggest city
like
is...
if Mark Wahlberg did every voice in that game, then I would buy it right now.
Yeah. It's the Wahlburgers of...
Well, that needs to be a mod. That needs to be a mod bad.
Maybe he could get Donnie in there, give him some work. I don't know.
Yeah. The voice... joking aside, the voice performances are good because there's... I feel like there's more emotional resonance to looking for your son than looking for your estranged father, In Fallout 3, you're looking for Liam Neeson, your dad. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I love my dad, but at the same time, it would be different if somebody kidnapped my daughter, and so the voice performances, at least playing through as a female, which I did, are really good and like express that level of emotion of, I need to find my son. So even though she does not sound Bostonian at all, even close in any way, it is a good performance. I'll say that. And it's a fun game. It's a good game. I'm still playing it after I got done with the review, which is usually like the highest compliment I can pay to a game because there's just still a ton of stuff to do. That'll probably change once I get Tomb Raider. But it's fun. It's good. It's just it's Fallout 3. And then a lot of the reaction I saw from the chatty was like, "That's exactly what I wanted was more Fallout 3." And I was like, "Well then,
good. That's what you get."
Like, but as a critic, as like a reviewer, I need to like address this and point out that like it's kind of unambitious in a weird way. As much as you could say unambitious for these gigantic sprawling things that Bethesda makes, it feels like it's following a very set formula. And the way that I tried to explain it to Chatty was basically like it's the way the systems interlocked in Fallout 3 were so unpredictable that it made the world feel alive in a way. It was like this kind of magical feeling where it was like, oh, anything can happen. And in the 7 years since then, we've kind of gotten used to that. We know how those systems work. We see behind the wallpaper, so to speak. And so to give us the modern equivalent of that feeling, they needed to introduce some new stuff that made it more complex, and they didn't really. So I'm just looking at this thing and seeing how all the systems work because they work the exact same way as they did almost a decade ago. And I'm like, okay, well, the world just kind of feels less magical because it doesn't feel unpredictable and crazy and like anything can happen. It feels like, okay, I see where the machinery is. It's like as living as Fallout 3, but not adjusted for inflation, is how I put it at one point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a good game, though. I liked it. It's probably going to be somewhere on my top 10. I just don't know where. I was kind of expecting it to be somewhere in the top 3, and it wasn't really. Like, you can already tell it's probably not going to be. So we just talked about a lot of AAA games, and that's kind of what today's show is about, guys. So let's say we get to our big topic.
Okay.
We are fast approaching Thanksgiving Day in America, and as a result, this week we have seen publishers' last big push to get out their biggest games. Fallout 3, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and StarCraft Legacy of the Void all hit simultaneously, making a veritable feast of gaming goodness on top of the last several weeks of non-stop AAA releases. But is the fall release season good for the industry? So this week we're talking about the video game retail schedule is pushing so much into basically a two-month span of October and November. Is that healthy for the industry's sustained growth? Are more games being released throughout the year to make a more rounded schedule? Is this a sign of our industry's relative youth, or is it just similar to Hollywood's summer blockbuster and fall Oscar season schedule? And personally, do you guys tend to spend the winter catching up on all the releases, or do some just inevitably get left by the wayside? So I think that last question is a good place to start, because this is one of the reasons that I think it might not be good for the industry, is that with all these things releasing at the same time, there's just no time to catch up. Things start up again too fast for us to actually get to all of these things. Do you guys tend to experience that problem?
Yep.
Way too often.
Well, it's been especially egregious this year because look how many shooters came out at the same time, right? You had Halo, you had Black Ops, you have Battlefront coming out. I think there's probably some others. And
Destiny: The Taken King, which isn't a new shooter, but
yeah. So now, like, potentially you have like 4 different shooters to juggle or choose from, and that's too much. Like that.
Yeah, there was definitely some time that I was like switching between Halo and Destiny and like missing things.
Yep.
Thinking like, oh, why can't I do this move or this move? Yep. And it took me a second to realize, oh, right, yeah, I'm playing Destiny right now. Yep. Or vice versa. It kind of goes both ways because they both kind of feel very similar.
And if you have more distance between that, it's not so much a problem. But when we're cramming everything into like a 2-month span, it gets to be really noticeable.
Yeah. Ozzy, I think as a game journalist, you're especially prone to this because you have actual work to do involving playing games. And so our pile of shame tends to get rather large, and some things just get left behind. Do you find that?
I will say that I definitely approach this season differently now as a writer than I have as just a fan. Like before, I would just like pick 1 or 2 games, just kind of like concentrate on those, be able to just enjoy them for the full 100, 120 hours, whatever. Like 10 years ago, I would just play Team Fortress 2 for the entire fall. Can't really do that anymore. And I think what that does is now, from my perspective, I never realized like how many games are coming out at this point. Like it's just an overwhelming amount, and it's not just the fall releases too. Even stuff from back in the summer or even back like in late spring.
Yeah,
They're getting DLC releases. They're getting season pass content. Like so, we got that stuff coming out. We're in the second week of November, and the first thing we started talking about was Hearthstone. Like there are a bunch of other games that have new stuff coming out as well to go on top of the fall releases, and that's just overload.
And there's a certain wanting to be. I'm going to use a word here that I kind of don't like, but it's sort of a zeitgeist thing because for us as game journos, so to speak, we do all this stuff because it's like, oh, we need to keep up with this stuff. We need to have a full plate of a well-rounded idea of all these things that are coming out, and with
Game of the Year coming up. Game of the Year evaluation in a month.
Basically, right after Thanksgiving, we're going to be diving into Game of the Year. So it's going to be like, well, over Thanksgiving break, finish all the stuff you haven't yet. But so like that puts us in that sort of unique position. But I feel like that sort of bleeds into the fandom in general. I feel like people who are not game journalists sort of treat the industry the same way. Like, I need to play everything. I need, and it's like, no, you don't. Like, you can pick and choose. You're not one of us. Don't torture yourself trying to do the thing that is like most unfortunate about our job. So like,
but to be fair, it's a good problem.
Part of the discussion. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to have a thing to add to the discussion when it comes up. Basically.
Yeah, I feel that and I'm not like technically in the business, so to speak. I'm sort of operating on the periphery of it, but yeah, I have that problem too, because like part of doing this show is I should probably have stuff to talk about. So I've got to sample some different things, at least try some different things. But I also have the luxury of being able to say, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this yet. Maybe I don't want to play this game at this time. So I can't even imagine what it's like for you guys who basically have to play everything.
Or at least everything that gets recommended. I mean, like I said, Tomb Raider is one of those things that I was like, yeah, I'll wait, and maybe somebody will get it for me for Christmas, and it'll be like a nice Christmas present. But it's like now it feels like I can't do that.
Just get Tomb Raider. Just get Tomb Raider. Just do it.
It's getting enough chatter that I'm like, okay, this is something that sounds like it would be a strong contender for me.
Your family can get you socks or something. Just get Tomb Raider.
Yeah. I could always use more socks.
It's hard to juggle the games like the Halos, the Tomb Raiders, the Fallouts, and all that when there's still stuff coming out for like Arkham Knight and Hearthstone and Splatoon and a couple of those games. It's like,
it's never going to end. Aliens are going to find Splatoon updates.
Which is so awesome. I love that they're still updating that game and still doing all of it for free.
I mean, Nintendo's doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So comments from users. This one's from Jingletard, which I find a very appropriate name for this. But Jingletard says they're trying to cash in on that fat Steam, Xbox Live, PSN, Wii Shop gift card bunnies, which is true. Obviously, they are. There is an element of you got money or gift cards for Christmas, and we want to have all of our stuff out so you can buy it. That's kind of true overall in the retail space. This is just kind of the mad rush of retail in general.
Although the digital shops have had much more presence in the last couple of years than they have in the past. And I'm not just talking about Steam. I'm talking about like your Xbox store, your PlayStation store. Like those stores are offering big discounts too now. So it's good to have those gift cards laying around.
Yeah, and it helps fill in the gaps. So any gaps that you actually did have, you can stock up for the long cold winter because we're seeing some more releases mainly in March. Basically, everything that was delayed this year was pushed to March. So, like, March has become get it out before the end of the fiscal year quarter month. But at the same time, that basically means that January and February are dead. So, any catching up that you need to do, aren't they? Is there something I don't know?
Well, we got Far Cry Primal set in February. We've got Battleborn coming in February. XCOM's coming in February. Like a lot of stuff is. I think Star Fox is supposed to come in February.
Damn it.
Well, I think Star Fox is like nebulous Q1 or something, like first quarter.
Now I don't even have any time to make up. That's horrible news.
They're pushing a lot of stuff. Uncharted is supposed to come out like around February, March.
Isn't Street Fighter a February game too?
That's right. Yes, it is. Shit. So there's a lot of stuff coming in the early
January. We have 1 month.
That's when I'm going to play Fallout.
And arguably, December is pretty dead too. Like after Just Cause releases, there's not really anything coming.
There's Just Cause, Rainbow Six Siege, and Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Remember that one kind of insane year that I think the Old Republic released on, what was it, December
20th?
Yeah, the 20th. It was.
I remember
that. Like a weirdly late time in the year, and it's like, well, we can't consider you for Game of the Year because this is well after all of that work is done. Sorry. It put them in a weird spot, which sort of illustrates why publishers are pushing this stuff out, is that they want to be part of those discussions because that way they can slap the label on the box and say winner of blah 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 Game of the Year awards, and sell it again to people in about 8 months.
Well, but to their credit, they are kind of acknowledging that the first part of the year exists. That's kind of what Hollywood's finally getting around to too. We're starting to see more and more movies launching February, March. So it's not quite the dead zone it used to be.
In the movie industry, this is sort of the comparison that I drew that we actually have a comment on. But in the movie industry, I almost feel like that's the summer blockbuster season, just kind of like bleeding more and
just
more
going
out
back
on
further
the
and further.
edges. Yeah, like it's extending a little further into August every year and a little earlier into March every year because they're making so many of them that they're like, we can't have every blockbuster movie come out in the same 4 weekends, like. But we had a comment from Himtroll on that who says he doesn't really think it is comparable to movie releases. There are a lot of developers and publishers who have one or a few big cash cow franchises, and those games need to be released at the optimal time because the next one won't be out for a while. That combined with the fact that a lot of people only play certain genres makes it sustainable. But most people who go to the movies will gladly watch genres they don't usually watch if it receives great reviews and critical acclaim. Most people who play games won't start playing a genre or series they have no interest in just because the latest game is great. I have no interest in playing StarCraft, Call of Duty, Street Fighter, or Tomb Raider, despite the fact that each new release is received well by fans.
I think the best example of this would probably be horror, because you can talk me into Guillermo del Toro. What was the one that came out last month?
Crimson Peak.
Crimson Peak.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I didn't. I did not see it yet, but I really wanted to go see it.
It's really good.
I can be talked into that.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie specifically, but it's really, really good.
Yeah, I've heard it was sort of marketed wrong, but
it was.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic harder, anyway.
But it's harder to talk me into something like Until Dawn, because I don't know if I necessarily want horror in my gaming experience.
Yeah, I mean, gaming is such an investment, and not just monetarily, like time-wise. When the way that we review games, I think in general in the press these days, and us specifically, is you're not evaluating is this worth your money, because everyone has a different amount of money, and you never know how much people value their money or their games. So it's more like, is this worth your time? We know that time is a limited commodity. Do you have enough time for this? And horror games are just like the kind of thing that I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend 12 hours playing a horror game. Like if it's not a genre that I love, I don't know if I can spare that amount of time. So it makes it difficult to make time for those sorts of things.
Yeah, and there are people that don't gravitate towards those games, or don't gravitate towards shooters, or don't gravitate towards RTS games. There are people out there that don't like Fallout. I know they're strange people, but they exist.
They exist, yeah. I saw some people on the chatty who just said like, I'm returning it, too buggy, and I'm like, okay, well. I mean, yeah, fair.
I mean, you should have waited a couple months.
At some point, I understand it, because at some point you have to say, Bethesda bugs aren't charming anymore. Like, they're not fun. Like, at this point, just kind of
it's that Bethesda change. I saw one person. I mentioned that the engine should have been updated, and somebody commented like, "Well, maybe the engine is doing what they wanted to do," and I'm like, "It can't be." Like,
well, that's the weird thing.
This cannot possibly be how they want it to be working.
Here's the thing that's interesting about that. Like, there's this recurring idea that, well, this is the vision of the developers. This is the vision of the creators. It's usually not. Like, this is an iterative process. You make changes, you adjust things, you make, that sort of thing. Like, we saw all this, like, consternation over, like, the changes to unlockable costumes in Fatal Frame and that sort of thing. Like, they're tampering with the developer's vision. Like, no, they're actually just acknowledging the realities of marketing a game and
localizing and things like that.
Right. And the Armika stuff and stuff like that, like, we kind of have to get past this notion that games are like, that they're the product of like a single vision. They're not. There's a bunch of realities, compromises, iterations you have to do. And
also we have no idea, like the Armika example specifically, like we have no idea what that was costing in like system resources to have the jiggle physics to that,
Yeah, and
tuned to that level or whatever. Like,
and Capcom might have like, yeah.
I'm sorry, that's such a bizarre situation just because people are getting up in arms over that, but they realize that beta isn't the finished product, right?
Yeah, like that's why it's a beta, exactly.
I don't know, but anyway, that's a tangent. I'm sorry, but like
it is. But we're going on tangents a bit today. It's fine. I want to bring up this comment from Mobab, who brought up a couple of good points. He says the good part of this sort of having the release schedule as it is arranged is that you usually get the best deals this time of year, which makes it easier for some of us who don't always buy games throughout the year. We're confident that prices will remain roughly the same in the coming months, and we won't find ourselves in a situation where we should have just waited 2 more months for an even bigger discount. So he's basically saying that because the release schedule is organized in such a kind of predictable way, we tend to know when things are going to be put on sale.
That's fair.
It's why people have the Steam holiday sale circled on their calendars.
Which is true, and it also means, to a certain extent, it's almost a drawback for the publishers, because if you have a certain quality or a certain review score or a certain, unlevel of hype, like if a game is just like not being hyped that much, but it got pretty good reviews, and it's like, okay, you can probably look at that and say that's probably going to go on sale in about 2 months.
Yeah,
and then you just don't buy it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It's funny because I don't know why Ubisoft has done this to themselves, but every single year since I got into the series, which was probably around Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed has always gone on sale on Black Friday.
Yeah,
you can
I knew
always
exactly where you're going with that.
$35 every single year. It never fails, and it's going to happen again this year with Syndicate. It's going to be $35 at Target. So I'm like, why do I have to get it on launch day?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, they're releasing a little early, and also it's a yearly iterative series, which I think that's a whole other topic in itself. But I think that tends to drive prices down.
Yeah. But with so much else out there, I don't need to spend $60 on it. I can spend $60 on something else
then spend $35 on it later. Yeah, exactly. Even if you know you want it, you can just wait. Mobab's other point, the con to his pro, is the good part is the sales being predictable. The bad part is a more rounded schedule. Rounded schedule will make it easier for devs. He says releasing games during the big holiday season means crunch time before and after release, and this is toxic to developers.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is its own. This is touching on its own topic. Crunch time could be its own big topic. It's that important of an issue. But he's right that that's basically a byproduct of the release schedule being what it is, and publishers not being willing to wait, till January to release their game because they have some, to their credit, to be fair, they probably have an analyst who is correct when he looks at the numbers and says, well, if we launch in October, we make X number of sales more than if we launch in February. So that's going to affect the bottom line, which affects the budget, which affects everything else. But it does create this crunch thing that it feels like the whole industry is revolved around, and it feels like that's partly because the final phase of development just doesn't have long enough built into the scheduling. And we never see that in other industries, partly because those industries aren't creating worlds. but it feels like with a little more planning, they could probably avoid crunch. If you just said we're going to develop this game for this long, and we're going to have whatever the normal amount of crunch time is, we're going to have twice as long of that phase of game development. We're gonna give our developers twice as much time as we usually do. Why wouldn't that solve the problem?
I feel like that's where Activision should get a little credit with Call of Duty, but now that they've got 3 studios kind of rotating in on them, because now they're giving them 3-year dev cycle.
Yeah,
that's getting better games out of it.
And like you just said, it's showing in the quality, which it varies from series to series. Ubisoft has done the cycling devs thing, but their version of cycling devs is also having all hands on deck. Like every Ubisoft studio is creating assets for everything all the time. So it's probably not quite the same thing as the Call of Duty studios. Trapped in Suit actually responded to Mobab and said, on the other hand, we all know the big sales are coming. The holiday Steam sales and their Origin, blah, 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 equivalents will be hitting. That means the single-player games you may have passed on a year ago will be competing with the glut of buggy new releases that just hit. I think he's probably making an allusion to Fallout there. So, yeah, it all comes back to sales over and over again.
That's the business.
you can get a polished 2014 game in comparison to 2015. There's a reason that people jumped on Battlefront 4 like about a year after its release because it's actually a good game now.
Yep.
And I mean, even if you went back and got, a lot of these games, they put the old version on sale when the new version comes out. So even if you just didn't play the first Tomb Raider, and you get the Tomb Raider hype, it's like, well, I can just play the original Tomb Raider for like, I don't know, $10. Like,
actually, it's a good time to mention that this is probably your last chance to get Tomb Raider Definitive Edition on Games with Gold because I think it goes away this weekend. So.
Oh yeah, grab that.
I think it's already gone, isn't it?
Is it?
I think so. I at least I didn't see it when I went.
Well, you missed out.
Okay, then you missed out. I am sorry for teasing you like that.
But you should get it anyway if you haven't played it.
Yeah. It's a great game. So it sounds like that overall this topic has a lot of positives and negatives. It's not like a cut and dried topic, but I think we had a good discussion. And since we do not have that much time, I'm going to move on into Newsy Bits right after our sponsorship.
Yes, that's right. The Chattycast brought to you by Audible.com. They're offering you, the listeners, a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial to check out their service. Lots of great books on games, tech, and hundreds of other topics to choose from. So you can go there, check out over 150,000 titles with your free audiobook download. Visit audibletrial.com/chattycast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/chattycast.
Thank you, Brian. So Newsy Bits, the part of the show where we give quick thoughts on a couple of quick news stories. We have the full-on BlizzCon wrap-up, which we touched on earlier. They announced a ton of things besides Hearthstone. They have
Is it time to talk about the Warcraft trailer?
We can, yeah. It wasn't on my list, but sure, yeah. I mean, BlizzCon in general.
I'm just doing this just for Brian because Brian's just gonna go nuts on it because that was the atmosphere.
It looked real good.
Center. It was incredible.
I mean,
for that.
I've heard the complaints about CG, which whatever. I guess I just have a different.
You know what? The movies are what they are.
Whatever. I'm happy with that. They also announced, the Overwatch Retail Edition, and it's not going to be free to play, which pretty much everybody kind of assumed.
I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
So basically, it's $40 for a standard edition and $60 with a bunch of goodies.
Yeah.
For all the other Blizzard games too, which actually is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And you get 21 starter characters. Obviously, they're going to be adding more characters as they go. That game cries out for adding characters as you go. But 21 starting characters, you get all of them, which makes sense. I mean, everybody kind of assumed it would be free to play, but that actually makes more sense as a shooter because when you're a team-based shooter, you kind of need to allow people to switch up characters on the fly to deal with the current situation that you're facing from the other team. And so if it was like, well, you really need a heavy right now, buy him for $4.99. Like that would be
that wouldn't really
the
work.
most obnoxious thing.
You can't go with the Heroes of the Storm model for something like that. Like that would.
Yeah.
So here's my question. The collector's edition that comes with the additional goodies for the other games, is that regardless of what version you buy? Like, if I buy this on PlayStation 4, do I still get
so, and people have raised that is weird. People have definitely pointed out, like, that's kind of strange that if you buy the PS4 version, you get a bunch of stuff that's pretty much only on PC.
But it's the only way they could do it, too. Like, listen, if I'm going to buy the PlayStation 4 version, I don't get that stuff for my other Blizzard games, then I should probably pay $10 less for the PS4 version, right? Like it's the only way to make it fair. Have a digital
version. Who knows? Yeah. It makes sense. But I mean, I'm going to cash that stuff in. It's got a nice Hearthstone card back.
I can use Tradester in Heroes of the Storm. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I'm only looking at Blizzard games now because they have Heroes of the Storm characters associated with them.
Blizzard is kind of brilliant at this. This has been a strategy they've been sort of exercising and developing over the last few years of just, like, all of their games coming up with goodies for other games, which constantly encourages you to try out their other games.
Yep, it's brilliant.
It's kind of genius, and they're killing it. Their Heroes of the Storm specific announcement was... well, they had the arena mode, which, as I understand, was only at BlizzCon. But they also have this new viral hero, which I think
was wow.
It's a cool idea. It's a co-op hero, right?
Yes.
And to get him, you have to play with someone who already has him, so it spreads virally. Eventually, everyone will have him.
Yeah. So the idea is like everybody at BlizzCon got him. So you have to find those people, and you have to win. I think you have to win either twice or 4 times, depending on which part of him you're controlling. But once you win, you get him. But the thing is, it's such a teamwork-based hero. If you're playing with a stranger, you're not going to have a chance. Like that.
Well,
I was playing with one of the devs at BlizzCon. I was lost.
Sort of the smart thing about it is that to encourage people to play with, noobs who do not have him, they're like, hey, if you just randomly look for someone to play with and do it, then we'll give you some. I think it's gold. They basically like give them a reward to encourage them to play with people who don't have them.
And they want to encourage people to be friendlier to newcomers. They want to encourage them to like kind of be mentors to them. But I don't think that's how the online space quite works.
I will say though, I mean, it's better than the other online games I've played. Like when I play Heroes of the Storm, I don't have people yelling at me for being an idiot like I do on League of Legends. Heroes of the Storm, people are like, hey, good job, or hey, maybe don't do that. Yeah. They're not quite jerks the way that.
Is there any other Hearthstone or not Hearthstone, Blizzardy bits?
I will say I want to see Cho'Gall in an esports scenario, because I asked when I interviewed the devs, I go, if you've got like two people that are like totally in sync, like you got in esports, how powerful does this guy get? And they're like, oh, he's insane.
It's like insane. It's like a Jaeger, like their mind.
They drift compatible, yeah. You got there first. That's where I was going.
Because he's got attacks where like one person has to like kind of initiate it and the other person has to activate it. Like he throws a bomb and like one person throws a bomb, the other person has to detonate it. So they have to really be like on point.
That's pretty awesome.
I want to see how that works in like a pro gaming capacity, because that could be a lot of fun to watch.
So my only other newsy bit, I've got a couple others because I always stack more in here in case we have time, but my only other newsy bit that I think we have time for, that I think we kind of have to talk about, Nintendo Directs are coming back today. Later today,
yes.
There's going to be the first Nintendo Direct since Iwata's passing.
If you're listening to this on a Friday when you get the show, it'll already be over.
It already happened, yeah.
You will know what has happened and we won't, so you have that going for you.
Lucky. But Ozzy, you put together a feature, 4 things to look for from the first Nintendo Direct. It seemed fairly grounded and reasonable. You weren't making a lot of like crazy demands, which I think people tend to do when they make speculative lists like this. But you basically said we need more Star Fox. Help me remember all the things on the list.
We need an update on that because
you need an update on Star Fox.
Because they delayed it for a reason, and I think Nintendo heard the noise from people like us that were saying like, yeah, the controls are wonky. The
controls are
they're very unfriendly.
and it didn't look as good as I've come to expect from Nintendo. I mean, like, I know it's a different kind of game than, Mario's and things like that, but there's a certain level of polish that it didn't really have.
Yeah, I think they went back to the drawing board with this, and I hope that they'll offer at least some sort of update or at least a release date. I think they'll, at the very least, offer a trailer of some sort to like kind of start getting people buzzed about it again. But yeah, I think it's. I mean,
part of that might be that they showed off like an ugly level. Like they showed off like the Corneria level, which is just kind of grassy and looked a lot like Star Fox 64. The screenshots they've released of other areas actually look quite a bit better. So
I think they overestimated the nostalgia for Star Fox.
Yeah, 64. I think they definitely did.
The game and all, but that's. And I love the Star Fox franchise. I really do, but I don't have that kind of nostalgia for Star Fox 64 that most other people do.
Right. So you also predicted that they're going to push for Xenoblade Chronicles X, which seems
it's their big holiday title.
Like it's all they got very left. Soon. Yeah. How weird is that? Like, I know Mario Maker is big and it's gonna continue to do huge numbers, but like, how weird is it that it's like we've already pretty much seen Nintendo's slate?
Yeah, we've seen everything they've got because they were supposed to have Star Fox and they were supposed to have Zelda, and both of those got delayed. So all that's left now is Xenoblade Chronicles X. And the thing is, what I've seen of it, it's gorgeous. Like they really should be pushing that. It's like they can have a new hit franchise on their hands. Like I know it's been around for a while, but it's kind of niche. It's kind of like
it's not theirs yet. Yeah,
like they can get a bigger fan base for it, and I think this is their opportunity.
I hope they're running TV ads. Like that's one of the big things. I think you could sell that game if you showed what it looks like on television.
It's funny because I use a lot of apps, and a lot of those apps have ads and such. Mm-hmm. I think one of the Disney apps actually is running Nintendo ads, and no Xenoblade Chronicles X anywhere.
But it's not really a kids game. Like it's not really like the Disney market.
This is true.
Yeah.
When you see Nintendo, it might be a little bit misleading.
Right. Like but they should be running on like Adult Swim and like during like that sort of thing. Like that's the audience that would grok it.
Give it the Toonami review.
Exactly, Toonami. That's like perfect for Xenoblade Chronicles.
to push through these other two real quickly, you predicted something celebrating Pokemon's 20th anniversary, which
Next year is 20 years.
They're about to bring out another Mystery Dungeon game, but that's never been the major Pokemon thing. So
I think they'll at least hint at something on the way next year. They'll probably talk more about Pokken Tournament. But I was saying that eventually we're going to get the next 3DS generation Pokemon because they've already been hinting at it. But that's not going to happen just yet. That's going to be a little later down the line. But at the very least, they'll get the ball rolling. They'll introduce it.
And finally, the Smash Brothers Fighters ballot. I think that's probably also kind of a given. They need to do that because it's been long enough that people are going to expect it. One thing that I am not expecting, and that I've seen people say, oh, maybe they'll do this. They're not going to talk about the NX, guys. They're not going to.
No.
In fact, they explicitly said they won't.
Yeah. For some reason, every time Nintendo says anything, that's the first thing that comes up.
Well, the thing is, like, it's getting annoying because they said from the word go they would not be talking about this thing until 2016 at the earliest. And they would, and like maybe not even releasing it until 2017. But people are still like, "Is this gonna be where we hear about the NX?" No, you're not. You're not gonna hear anything until
NX. You know how? Yeah. So no, hold on. They'll talk about that probably. I'm gonna guess they start talking about it in March.
I think
before they close the books, and then E3 is their big thing.
Yeah, they show it at E3. That's where we'll see it.
Yeah, it's way too early to talk about that. I'm looking forward to the Smash ballot results, hopefully, because it's been 2 months. They issue a patch like every 2 months or so. So it's around that time that they start talking about it, and they start issuing probably some new DLC. But it's time to start talking about the Smash ballot because it's been over a month, and it's time to find out who won.
Whoever wins that, there's going to be a meltdown no matter what. The fans are never.
Oh, it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be a hilarious, beautiful mess.
Yeah,
I love it.
Somebody on Reddit.
Ridley, man.
Somebody on Reddit, like 2 months, I think back in September, was tabulating the results as they were at that moment, and I think Shanti was leading at the time. That's surprising to me.
Well, it's not surprising when you consider that Way Forward was really pushing for her. Like they
that makes sense.
Really engaged their fans. They actively waged a campaign.
Yeah.
Which good on them, because I actually like Shanti. I actually tried the most recent game at IndieCade. Like, that's a lot of fun.
I didn't follow this.
Yeah, she'd be a fun character.
I didn't follow this poll that closely, but was the boy and his blob anywhere on there?
Didn't see it. Well, the thing is, it's all right in. Like it's all right in campaign, so you could put whoever you wanted on there.
Need to push for that. All right. So
Goku.
We're running low on time. We're going to play a quick round of Beat the Doc. I say quick because I think these are actually a little easier than usual this time. So today's game is called Apocalypse. Video games revel in destruction, so it's only natural that lots of them are set in post-apocalyptic dystopias where shooting hundreds of dudes in the head is not only socially acceptable but encouraged. I'm going to describe a video game apocalypse, and you tell me which game or series it belongs to. And two of these examples is a specific game rather than a series, and I'll let you know which ones those are. So, as an example, if I said, in an alternate history, the Cold War extended for a century before nuclear destruction destroyed pretty much everything, the answer would, of course, be Fallout. Mm-hmm. These first two are kind of gimmies. I did that on purpose, so bear with me. All right. Ozzy, you first. A mad scientist nearly destroys Lilat with biological weapons, then flees to a remote planet.
That's Star Fox.
That is Star Fox. Brian, also a gimme.
Yes.
A mad general murders his emperor and then upsets a delicate magical balance, rendering the world desolate.
Oh, Final Fantasy 6 or 3, depending on which country you're in.
Yes. Now they're going to get slightly harder. In an alternate history, Ozzy, in an alternate history, recovery from the ravages of World War II is interrupted by an alien virus that nearly wipes out humanity.
Alien virus?
Mm-hmm.
Is it XCOM?
Oh, no, it is not XCOM. The World War II thing was a hint. You might not remember that this was actually about an alien virus. It was Resistance, Fall of Man.
Oh.
Resistance. The Chimera were not aliens. They were humans who got infected with this alien thing. All right, Brian. You, the player, play as two of four members of a special group in this series where the actual biblical version of the apocalypse is ongoing.
I actually don't know.
This is easier version of the game?
I gave you two gimmies. Come on. That's Darksiders. Darksiders, guys.
Oh, okay.
Four members of a special group. Yeah. All right.
The Horseman. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So tiebreaker. This is going to be buzz in with the answer if you know. Augmented mankind suffers from an economic catastrophe known as the collapse, and this is a specific game in a series. Although for the tiebreaker, I guess I could just go with the series.
All right, I'll buzz in with Deus Ex Human Revolution.
It is not Human Revolution. No, I'm sorry.
Deus Ex Invisible War.
I got it right. Yeah, Brian got it right. It was Invisible War. I call that a tie because you both got like half the answer. It is Invisible War. That is the rest of the series takes place kind of pre-apocalypse, but the collapse is really when it.
I immediately went to Human Revolution when you said augmented. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, like I knew it was Deus Ex. I just didn't know which one it was, so I was thinking.
I got the wrong one.
Yeah, Invisible War is the last one chronologically, and it's the only one that takes place after the collapse. So.
Gotcha.
Apocalypse. It seemed fitting with Fallout being, the major release of this week. That was one of our newsy bits that we didn't touch on. That it sold like 12 million copies, which you can't say that much about. It's just like, wow, that sold a lot.
Yep.
So.
Biggest entertainment launch. ... Whatever. They do those things all the time. Since the last one.
So that is the show. Please review us on iTunes. It helps other people find the show. If you want to help other people find the show, if you'd rather keep us to yourselves, you selfish, greedy bastard.
Well, consider it your good deed, like a Boy Scout leading an old lady across the street. Like, find your friend, find your neighbor.
The new listener is the old lady.
Yep, and you are the Boy Scout or Girl Scout,
and we're the street, I guess.
Yeah, and so you are taking them by the hand, sitting them down at their computer, and pulling up iTunes and saying, "This, listen to this," and they will do it. And you have done your duty as a member of the Chatty community.
Excellent analogy. So before we go, Ozzy, do you have any plugs for us today for content you have planning on going up this week?
I have a World of Warcraft interview that's going to go up in just a couple of hours. And speaking of Blizzard, we talked a lot about Fallout. We talked a lot about Tomb Raider. It's easy to forget that StarCraft II: Legacy of the Void is also out this week.
Happened.
So it's wrapping up the story. I actually have a lot of BlizzCon interviews from over the weekend, and one of them was for StarCraft. They seem to have put a lot of love into the end of the story and to the end of the saga. So give it a look.
Cool.
They're a couple of fascinating reads, and if you're a StarCraft fan, jump right in. It's waiting for you.
I have an interview up right now with an Xbox exec about the new dashboard update, and like I said earlier, my Hearthstone guys are going to be coming as fast as I can get them out after the show. But this week is sort of a special occasion because I know that Brian happens to have an actual plug this week, so I'm going to let him
do, and I just got a copy of this. A book is coming out. I think it's going to be available in January, called From Jack Johnson to LeBron James, Sports Media and the Color Line. It's basically talking about how people of color, especially black men, have been investigated and reported on in the sports media. So it literally goes back from like Jack Johnson, the legendary boxer, to LeBron James, and looks at like different examples of how we've talked about race and sports in the media. I have a chapter in here on Michael Vick. A lot of people, when I tell them that, get all weird. I'm not like defending what he did. What he did was incredibly bad, but I'm interested in looking at how the media covered his whole, return to football, his redemption arc. So that's in here. I wrote it a while ago. It's exciting to finally see this get print. So if you're interested in that, it's not strictly speaking related to video games, but it's a cool topic and a lot of really good, solid things. I'm actually excited to kind of read through some of this myself. So From Jack Johnson to LeBron James, edited by Chris Lamb. We'll shout out to Chris. Thanks, Chris. Check it out if you are interested in sports and race and that kind of stuff.
So is that your first...
It's a little crazy that we always have to qualify it without defending what he did. But
without defending what Michael Vick did.
I have no interest. And in fact,
but he is a really fast.
I don't know if I've ever met somebody who loves dogs the way that Brian loves dogs. So.
Yeah. Like, I say that right up in the chapter. Like, I am not defending what he is. I don't have no interest in that. What I am interested in looking at is like how he's redeemed. So again, it's a cool book, and it's a great topic. So I'm really excited to be part of it.
So Brian, just a quick question: is this your first inclusion in a book? Because I know you've been published in in journals.
I have. There's another book. I could publish. I have a chapter
you can plug your
on.
Other book. Go for it.
Yeah, I have a chapter on the reaction to the Muslim Batman character Night Runner. That's in another book called Parasocial Politics, edited by Jason Zenor. I don't know how you say his last name. Sorry if he's listening. I don't think he is. So that's out there, and I've got some like other journal articles and stuff floating around. And hopefully, if all goes well, I'll have some more book things to publish or to promote in the near future. So
cool.
But yeah,
all right.
I'm excited about. I'm really excited to see that it finally came out.
go get that book in January, you said?
Yeah, it's like $28 on Amazon right now, but you're getting this is like 700 pages long, so you're getting your money's worth.
Yeah, that looks like a meaty book right there.
It's a thick tome. You could drop it on someone's head and knock them out.
So that's the show. We're gonna head off and play more video games, but we will see you next week. So until then, I'm Steve Watts.
I'm Brian Carr.
And we will see you on Chatty.